Radios are relics from the past, but there are collectors who appreciate these vintage pieces. In today's story, we unveil an extraordinary story about Evelyn Harper, a retired librarian with a keen eye for the unusual that had always been drawn to the mysterious. So when she stumbled upon an old ham radio at an estate sale in the quiet town of Eldridge Falls, she couldn't help but feel a sense of intrigue. The radio was unlike any she had ever seen before. Its dials were worn and its copper wires frayed, giving it an almost ancient appearance, but there was something about it that drew her in, as if it held a secret waiting to be discovered. Without hesitation, Evelyn purchased the ham radio and brought it back to her cosy little cottage on the edge of town. She spent hours studying it, trying to figure out its secrets. She tinkered with its dials and knobs, but nothing seemed to happen. The sound, a faint crackling static, grows louder. It's not the usual radio chatter or the vintage jazz tunes that Evelyn is fond of. It's something different, something that sends a shiver down her spine. A voice, barely audible, echoes through the static, whispering in a tongue unknown. Just as she was about to give up and chalk it up as just another interesting but ultimately useless piece of equipment, she stumbled upon something extraordinary. Turning one particular dial in just the right way, she suddenly heard a faint static coming through the speakers. At first, Evelyn thought it was just static or interference from another nearby radio station. But as she listened more closely, she realized that this was no ordinary broadcast. She was hearing a message. Evelyn was overjoyed to have discovered the elusive message. For 2 weeks, she lingered in the same spot in the ham radio room, watching as the message played on and off, always repeating itself. But one night, as Evelyn was about to turn in for the night, the message suddenly stopped. Evelyn kept turning the dials, but all she heard was silence. Without any reason to suspect that she was the only one in the world to hear the mysterious message, Evelyn was starting to get concerned. Then one day, Evelyn arrived home from work to find her feline companion, Max, lying on the floor of the living room. He was terribly lethargic and wouldn't eat. She immediately rushed him to the veterinarian, where he had to be put down due to the illness he was suffering from. Evelyn was devastated by the loss of her beloved pet. She had adopted Max from the animal shelter when he was just a kitten, and they had been inseparable ever since. Evelyn couldn't imagine coming home to an empty house, with no one to greet her at the door and curl up next to her on the couch. But as she grieved for Max, Evelyn couldn't shake off the feeling that there was something strange about his sudden illness. He had always been a healthy and energetic cat, so for him to become so sick overnight seemed almost impossible. Her suspicions were confirmed when she received a call from Dr. Patel, the veterinarian who had treated Max. According to him, Max's illness was caused by some kind of toxin in his system, but he couldn't determine what it was or how it got there. Evelyn's mind immediately went to the ham radio. Could it have somehow emitted some kind of harmful radiation? She knew it sounded far-fetched, but she couldn't help but wonder if there was a connection between the radio and Max's illness. Determined to get answers, Evelyn returned home and rushed to her ham radio room. She turned it on and tried to recreate the exact dial settings from when she first heard the mysterious message. But this time, instead of static or silence, she heard a faint clicking noise coming through the speakers. She recognized it as Morse code and quickly grabbed a pen and paper to transcribe it. As she decoded the message, her heart raced with excitement and fear. The message read, "We are not alone. They're watching us." Evelyn's mind raced with questions. Who were they? And why did they seem interested in her? Were they responsible for Max's death? She couldn't shake off the feeling that this message was somehow connected to Max's sudden illness and death. But how? Was it just a coincidence, or was there something more sinister at play? Next day, weird things started happening at Evelyn's house. Strange shadows flickered in the corners of rooms, disappearing as soon as Evelyn turned her gaze towards them. Objects began to move on their own, sliding across tables and falling off shelves without any explanation. The temperature in the house fluctuated wildly, going from icy cold to sweltering heat within minutes. Evelyn tried to rationalize these events, attributing them to grief and stress from Max's sudden passing. But deep down, she knew this was not the explanation. The message from the ham radio echoed in her mind, filling her with a sense of foreboding. One night, as Evelyn lay in bed trying to fall asleep, She heard a soft whisper coming from the ham radio room. Heart pounding, she crept out of bed and made her way to the room. As she entered, the whispering stopped, and a chill ran down her spine. Suddenly, a voice spoke out from the ham radio, crackling with static but unmistakably clear. "Death is near." Evelyn's heart raced as she frantically looked around the room, searching for any sign of who or what was speaking to her, but all she could see was the old ham radio. Evelyn's hands trembled as she reached for the dial to turn off the radio, but before she could do so, a sudden gust of wind swept through the room, turning off the lights in the house. In the blackness, Evelyn could feel a presence looming closer, its icy breath brushing against her skin. She wanted to scream, to run, but fear rooted her to the spot. The voice whispered once more, right beside her ear. "They have found you." She knew she had to act fast before whatever malevolent force that had invaded her home could harm her further. With trembling hands, she reached for the ham radio once again, determined to silence the ominous voice that seemed to be taunting her. She mustered all her courage and turned the dial sharply, cutting off the voice mid-sentence. But as the room fell silent, Evelyn could sense a shift in the air. The oppressive presence seemed to retreat slightly, giving her a moment of respite, but the worst is yet to come. She knew that whatever had spoken to her through the ham radio was still there, lurking just out of sight. As her vision adjusted, she saw a figure materialize before her, a spectral form that seemed to waver between solid and intangible. It was a woman dressed in ancient clothes that Evelyn could not place, with a haunting beauty that sent shivers down her spine. The ghostly woman extended a hand towards Evelyn, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and longing. Evelyn falls into the trap and walks forward this shadowy figure. If you're loving the mystery and the suspense and want to see more, don't forget to hit that like button and make sure you subscribe to our channel. We've got a lot more twists and turns coming your way. Now let's dive back into the story. As Evelyn drew closer to the ghostly woman, a wave of cold washed over her, sending a shiver down her spine. She hesitated for a moment, uncertainty gnawing at her insides. But there was a profound sadness in the woman's eyes that tugged at Evelyn's heart, urging her forward. With each step she took, the air around her grew thicker, charged with an otherworldly energy that crackled like lightning. As Evelyn stood before the ghostly figure, she could feel a palpable sense of grief emanating from her. It was as though the very essence of sorrow clung to the woman like a heavy cloak, weighing her down with unspoken regrets and untold stories. Without saying a word, the ghostly woman reached out and grasped Evelyn's hand in a cold, ethereal grip. She feels her throat closing up, desperation clawing at her as she tried to pull away from the ghostly woman's chilling touch. The woman's eyes bore into Evelyn's, revealing glimpses of forgotten memories and lost moments. Whispers echoed in Evelyn's mind, fragments of stories that didn't belong to her, a soldier bidding farewell to his love, a child lost in a snowstorm, a mother grieving for her stillborn child. "Why?" Evelyn managed to croak, her voice barely audible. The ghostly woman's lips moved, but no sound emerged. Instead, her gaze intensified, urging Evelyn to understand. Visions flooded Evelyn's consciousness. She saw herself standing on a cliff, wind howling around her, tears streaming down her face. A choice, a leap into the abyss, or a return to the pain of the living. The ghostly woman had faced the same precipice, her heart torn between two worlds. Evelyn's memories intertwined with the woman's, their emotions merging like watercolours bleeding into one another. She felt the weight of centuries, the sorrow of lovers separated by war, the ache of mothers burying their children, the longing of souls trapped in limbo. The woman's grip tightened, and Evelyn's vision blurred. She glimpsed her own life, the missed opportunities, the unspoken words, the love left unexpressed. Regrets swirled around her, a tempest threatening to consume her. "Release me!" Evelyn pleaded, her voice raw. The ghostly woman's eyes softened, and for a moment Evelyn glimpsed forgiveness. "Why?" she asked again, her voice a mere whisper. Evelyn's throat closed further, her breath shallower. With trembling fingers, Evelyn touched the woman's cheek, feeling the chill of eternity. In the end, Evelyn Harper, the retired librarian with an uncanny knack for the extraordinary, meets her fate. The ghostly woman, now revealed as the source of the mysterious radio signal, was stranded and freezing in the harsh sea of the afterlife. Evelyn could feel her life force ebbing away, the cold seeping into her bones. In her final moments, she felt peace. A profound sense of fulfillment enveloped her as she gazed into the ethereal woman's eyes. Her lips curved into a gentle, contented smile, a silent testament to the depths of her emotions. And in that moment, her life force ebbed away, leaving her utterly spent. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and share. And as always, until next time.